Alright guys, how's it going? Um, I've realized recently that I, you guys don't really know that much about me because I just teach music, do guitar covers and write my own music. So there hasn't been many times when I've sort of had any reason to talk to you guys kind of at least about myself. And obviously music is what I do, it's my passion. And being a music artist is what I want to be, like what I'd like to do for my career. So obviously I've got like a lot of musical influences and things that kind of characterize the music that I write. And I thought going over like my CD collection would be like a good way to show you guys like the bands that I like and what influences me, and sort of you guys will get to know like my opinions on like bands and their albums and stuff. So I thought this would be pretty cool. I'm missing a few CDs, uh, but I still thought, well, if this is my collection, this is my collection. So it's like, you guys might wouldn't even have known that I was like missing CDs. Like, it's like the CDs I've got, the CDs I've got, whatever. Yeah. Just a quick plug. If you want to hear any of my music, I'll put the links in the description. I basically just write beautiful, sort of solo guitar tracks. I do some rap stuff as well, but I haven't released an album of that yet. Just a few originals on YouTube and stuff. But for now, it's literally I'm basically just a modern classical guitar player sort of thing. But yeah, let's jump into this. Yeah, I don't have all my CDs on a shelf, as you can see. I've just got it in this random box, um, because I'm always like sort of I was like moving around, because of like university and things, and we were also moving house. Like my family was moving house, like my parents and stuff, and we just moved again recently. So that's why they're all in here. So yeah, now Disturbed, I think Disturbed, they're not underrated, but a lot of people like metalheads, like within the metal community, are so biased against Disturbed. Like this album is one of the best. I would say my favorite metal albums are Master of Puppets, The Blackening, Chaos AD, and then this. And it's like if any metalhead heard, sort of like a someone who doesn't really like Disturbed, or kind of like an elitist metalhead, heard you say that like a Disturbed album is even on the same planet as like Master of Puppets, they think you're crazy. But this is literally one of the most like quintessential metal albums ever, and so many circumstances had to come together for this album to sound how it does. Like the personal experiences that crafted the people that wrote this. So then when they started writing music, like everything that sort of made them who they are and made the music that they would then write, and then write when they all the four guys that wrote it all came together in a room to then make stuff together. It's ridiculous how many things had to come together to make this album as incredible as it is. Honestly, there's nothing else like it, and to be honest, there probably never ever will be. And I really think that anyone that knows this band, they didn't really kind of sound like this after this. This is their first album, and I think it would have been amazing to hear like about three albums that sounded like this, and then go into their second and third and fourth albums. Because if they did that, they would have been like on Metallica level, like Machine Head level, like like with Machine Head, they started like with like the aggressive stuff, a bit of the kind of new metal aggressive stuff, and then into the sort of like thrash kind of like stuff that they do now, like before Catharsis. These guys would have just been. I mean, they're legendary because they're good. Disturbed, like that's why they're legendary. But I mean, legendary in a sense of like the lineage that they would have had if they had like done more of this sort of stuff in this album. And I feel like they're like, especially with the vocals, they were so creative and so many like the sounds and ideas, like the rap and the song vocals and just the material that David Draymond, the singer that he wrote on this album, I feel like was just at his best. Like he just had all these sick ideas and stuff. It's like, honestly, if you haven't heard this, like, do yourself a favor. Like, it is amazing. Um, yeah, this one is a melodic death metal album from a band from Italy, Lunacy. These guys, like, this album absolutely blew me away. Like, some of the, I've never heard people play guitars like how they do on this album. It's just insanely melodic and kind of just beautiful. Like this artwork is kind of how it sounds. It's just incredibly beautiful and vast. But the songs are pretty likable as well. Like, it's still kind of heavy, like it is melodic death metal. But the riffs, like, I just don't. It's like insanely thrashy, but it's pretty as thrash could sound, which is just so cool because it's like it's still like it's not boring because it's like atmospheric and stuff. It's like insanely sick riffs that are like just really likable. And I've heard like their other albums, and it kind of just sounds like the same or just slightly worse. I don't know if it's because I heard this one first that I'm a bit biased, but I would seriously check this out if you're basically just into metal, or like melodic death metal in general. 100 Light Years. It's really good, and I would say, where's the tune? Oh yeah, Ianus, not Ianus. The fourth track, that's probably my favourite. It's really good. I mean, I'd recommend just checking that out. Um, oh yeah, and as for the sickness, basically just check out the whole thing. That thing is absolutely amazing. Um, I don't really want to touch that Ectomorph stuff yet because I've got a lot to say about that since they're my favourite band, and these albums kind of came a bit later. So it's like I'd rather talk about the stuff in like the earlier stuff first, and then kind of get to that. On Monomath, I would say this is probably their best album. These guys are one of the most quintessential like metal bands. Like, nobody does kind of beautiful, heavy, tremolo picked riffs like these guys do, and the riffs are so likable. It's kind of like if these guys didn't do what they do, someone else would have done it because they just play music that's just ripe for, like, I don't want to get into like music theory, but it's kind of like when you just play the notes in a musical key, you basically get music that pretty much every human being on this world will love because it's kind of tied to our emotions, like the musical scale. And these guys basically just make sequences, so like forms of that, as their riffs, and it's just basically okay. If you hear this, you'll like it. I would say check out For Victory or Death, or to be honest, most of them are good, but I'd say that because For Victory or Death is actually probably like my third favorite, a Monomarth song in general. But yeah, this is like pretty much every track on this is amazing, which is why, for me personally, some like a Monomarth albums, I don't like every song on it, or I don't like any songs on it with like the sort of like newer stuff. I find it's kind of getting a bit stale. So this one is, if you want a new metal band to check out and you haven't heard of Monomarth, I really think, unless it's just kind of not your thing for some reason, I would definitely think you'd like something from this. Now, Linkin Park, like, I can't believe that, right, either, like, when I think of, like, modern metal, I don't know of anything that is like, oh, like, the good old days, like, back in, like, the year 2000 and stuff. And I don't know if that's just because I'm not being exposed to enough, like, marketing and stuff, but I feel like, I haven't heard a band like that is as creative and quintessential as this in years. And it's such a shame because if there is another band that's like this, not like that sounds the same, but a band that's so like just unique and has so much of their own character, You know, I'd love to hear something like that again, like how this would have sounded back in the day where there's nobody like Linkin Park. And like, again, almost every tune on this is just amazing. Um, I don't know, like, I don't know who, because the thing is, my subscribers kind of subscribe to me for different reasons. And I don't know if anyone's gonna see this video who isn't subscribed to me. But I assume most of you guys know of like the general sort of metal bands and stuff. So I guess everyone's probably heard of Linkin Park. But I can imagine that you might not have heard like all the songs on this album. Um, but like you might have heard like a few of the big ones, like One Step Closer or like Crawling. I mean, if you haven't heard In the End, then you're in for a treat. You know what I mean? It's like anyone who knows that song, it's like you're just gonna be like, yeah, dude, I wish I could hear that song again. This is one of the best, you know, I'd say one of the best albums ever. So I would seriously check this out if you haven't seen it. They've actually got a really good live set. I can't remember the festival at the top of my head, but if you just type in sort of like Linkin Park Live 2001, they play basically all this album because this was their first album and they released it sort of I think around that time. I can't really um, yeah, I don't really see a date on here, but yeah, like this was about the time when they only had this album, and the show is absolutely amazing. Yeah, literally just check out again pretty much anything. One Step Closer, I mean, it's my personal favorite. But it, you know, it really just depends. I mean, Crawling, Points of Authority, A Place in My Head, In the End, as I say. But yeah, like Linkin Park were incredible. But to be honest, I'd say this is the, you know, 'cause again, it's like when people just explode with their first album of what it is that they are. When if they're like this unique, strong, like sort of piece of art when they first come on with this thing that they've got to show the world. It's incredible, and I'd say to Linkin Park fans, even their second album, Meteora, aside from Breaking the Habit, I don't, and like the song Breaking the Habit, I don't think it's, you know, it's that special. And then when they got to the third album, I was like, man, these guys, what's this? There's nothing really about this album. I like two songs from it, and I don't even think they're that good. But this is one of the most quintessential albums ever. It's absolutely amazing. Seriously, check this out if you haven't heard it. Right, so this is actually a dance like genre album. Goa Trance, which is kind of like it's like Indian trance. And this album's a really good because I've only got a few albums from that genre, Goa Trance, GOA Trance. And I probably think this is the strongest one I've got. And if you're interested in kind of just really enjoyable melodies that are sort of like that sort of sound exotic, like kind of Indian, I would check this out. Like if you're even into dance music and you want to hear like a new album or something, I'd check this out. Fluid Dynamics, Denshidanshi. Like I was listening to Make. Like I couldn't remember what it sounded like. I hadn't heard it in a long time. I was listening to it like a few days ago, and it was really good. I was just like, man, this is just a random tune from this album, and it was killing it. Like that wasn't even like one of the best ones, and like Zuki, like the Dancing Shiva, like Feed the Mugwumps, like they're my favorites. And I know that all these songs are like on my iPod, and I know when I put the songs on there originally, it's because I liked all of them and I thought they were all great. And I listened through this for the first time when I was working on like an assignment when I was at university, and then for a few nights whilst I was working on it, I'd always just stick this album on repeat because the whole thing was just really good musical content. So if you want to hear something like this, I'd really recommend it. To be honest, I recommend it for anybody. Like it doesn't matter. I mean, today's a new day. You could find it Either you get into the genre that this is, or you get into something that you've never heard before, being this album if you've never heard it. So yeah, again, I mean, I'm gonna say that for all these albums. It's like, yeah, check it out, because it's, you know, in my opinion, all this stuff's really good. Black Sabbath, greatest hits. Again, like with the greatest hits, it's kind of like if you had like a Metallica greatest hits. What's it gonna have on it? It's gonna have every song that they play live that everyone loves, that everyone always says is like are the best songs. And in this case with Black Sabbath, it is literally like the quintessential like greatest hits album with the tracks from like when Ozzy was in the band essentially. I don't know how many people who are going to watch this who haven't heard like the songs from Black Sabbath. But again, if you want to hear like basically the first metal band ever, who are responsible for, because before this it was kind of like stuff wasn't really dark or sounded like metal. And in like 1970 they made their first album that had Paranoid and Iron Man on it. And those songs, even to this day, like they sound incredible and they sound just like great heavy metal. Um, yeah. Again, I don't know if anyone's gonna watch this who haven't like heard these songs before, but Black Sabbath, if you haven't heard them, I'd say they're worth checking out definitely. Even just for like the knowledge of you hearing, basically probably the most relevant metal band ever, even more so than Metallica, who people like most people would agree are the biggest metal band in the world. These guys are responsible for every metal band ever, and it's quite incredible. And it still sounds like something that's like, it's not stock metal. It still sounds like Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath is Black Sabbath, and it's really good stuff. And I've seen like interviews like with the guitar player. Um, I can't really tell which guy that would be. It's not the dude on the right, because that's Ozzy, the singer. But yeah, like I've seen like interviews with him and how he wrote the riffs and stuff, and you can tell he really sort of cared and had a reason for all the things he wrote and stuff. He was just trying to make good music. So the songs, they are good for human consumption. Now this thing, I swear these guys are Japanese, but I'm not too sure. Not that that's relevant, but they do have like this kind of, it's almost like poppy kind of melodic death metal, which I find really interesting, because it's kind of like, I mean, if I tried really hard, I could probably find other stuff that sounds like it, but um, aside from that, it's kind of like, well, I've never heard anything like this, and it just sounds like, I don't know, like some really like happy kind of dance music, but if it was like that, like the vocals that you would get from music like that combined with like literally like guitarists from melodic death metal, it's really interesting. Um, I don't know if you're looking for something different. I would check this out. Epsilon, Bloodstained Child. Uh, there's not a lot of like melodic death metal that I like, because only, generally I just tend to like the best kind of stuff, and I still rate this. That's why I've got the album. I pretty much like everything on here, so yeah, I mean, I'd check this out, to be fair. I'll just stick it all in the pile of stuff we've looked at. Now, that Denshidanshi album, this is the same genre, Goa Trance, and this, I mean, if it's not that the album by Denshidanshi, this is probably the best. Yeah, this is actually a compilation album. Yeah, like it is literally showing off like some of the best like Goa trance music ever. Just some of those incredible pieces of music that you can even make. I mean, people sit down at a computer and you can have as many instruments as you want, write whatever you want, like whatever melodies, rhythms, anything, and like you can literally just create like the greatest music. And these guys all attempted that with like a song each basically, but it is dance, like sort of like a electronic um, music. So if you're just indifferent to that, you won't like it. But this album is really good, and I still absolutely love some of these tunes. Like to this day, like the ones that I really like are some of like the best songs I've ever heard. Like this Black Hole Revisited one, uh, literally one of the best songs I've ever heard in my life. So yeah, this is really good. A Poach of the Terrans. Um, that's basically what this album's called, and then it's lots of different artists. The artists are in like the bigger font, and then the smaller font is the names of the songs. So yeah, Sun Trip Records, they all do this like style, like they all sign artists of this sort of genre, and a lot of their stuff is really good. Like the label's like really passionate about this kind of music. Now, Persephone, right? These guys are from a country that is absolutely tiny, Andorra, and I've never heard of any band from that country. These are the only people from there that I've ever heard of, and these guys are absolutely genius. They're sort of like progressive melodic death metal. Now, why that's relevant is it's basically just melodic death metal that is insanely well written. It's kind of like if Metallica did melodic death metal, and this kind of has like an oriental feel, and some of the riffs are just so awesome. And like a lot of the tracks, like there's a few tracks on here where they're just kind of like instrumentals that are really like emotional and stuff. Like they're not metal. It's just kind of like sort of I don't know how to describe it. Just kind of like music that's really soft and like I say, emotional. Um, which really kind of break up the sort of metal tracks, and overall when you listen to the album like kind of in full, it's just a incredibly strong album. Like the riffs, like I say, are really good, and it's just kind of, it just sounds like general metal that's just really enjoyable. That as an album is great with everything on it. But these guys, like, they're so smart because, like I say, it is kind of like, it has like prog elements, but it just comes off that it's basically just higher quality songs because they go into like imagine like if one Metallica didn't have all the sections and like the little like kind of like noodly bits in between and stuff, it wouldn't be as good. Like pretty much if you have the skill and you write great pieces of music, it almost then kind of has like prog elements because it's sort of like it's not just really concise and stereotypical. And these guys have like sort of done that, like the more extensive kind of work, and created some incredible songs. So this is really good. My favorite song is actually the first main song, "Fall to Rise." I mean, you could even just check that out. But I'd recommend listening to this in full though to get the kind of full effect, because some of the like emotional instrumental pieces are really nice too. Now, I don't want to touch that yet because that's Disturbed, and like I say, I've spoken very highly of Disturbed, so I want to kind of do that sort of stuff in a kind of a sensible order. Now, what I was saying about Black Sabbath with their greatest hits album, this is another example where every every track on it is a perfect choice for a greatest hits. Now, Ozzy Osbourne is pretty much like a super group, right? The guitarists are always amazing. Ozzy has incredible vocal material, ideas, and his vocal tone is one of my favorites ever. Like his music, I can't believe that more people don't know this guy's music. I mean, that's why people know Crazy Train and maybe Mr. Crowley. Like, imagine Crazy Train, but for like every song. Like, if Crazy Train's so good and everyone knows it and everyone knows it on guitar, why doesn't everyone else know all these other songs on here? That's the thing. So it's like, do yourself a favor and hear basically songs that are just as great as something like that, but they're all completely different, and like they do have different musicians like working on the pieces and stuff, and over time the album's changed, like the sort of sound slightly, you know, sort of morph into this new sound as they go along the albums, but they were always incredible quality. And like I say, it's like I don't understand why it's not more known that Ozzy Osbourne is a supergroup. It's just people writing incredible music with Ozzy being the vocalist. So if you want to hear some just incredible, like sort of like hard rock metal tunes, check this out. The essential Ozzy Osbourne. Now, I don't, I don't know if anyone's watching this is a fan of Limp Bizkit, but basically Limp Bizkit went massive with this album, and again, it's just a quintessential album. Like what I said about Disturb the Sickness, it's like something that they just hit it like out of the park with this unique creation being this album, where pretty much everything that everyone cares about from Limp Bizkit is from this album, and their entire like height that they've reached is because of the collective like quality of all the songs on this album. That's how powerful it is. I mean, aside from literally, if anyone even knows what I'm talking about, they would agree and say the only thing that's even relevant is Break Stuff, which is a song from the previous album before this one, right? That was a big hit. Maybe Nookie as well, but I'm personally not really much of a fan of that track. And then literally pretty much every song on this album, it's just crazy how, you know, you can just have a random point, whether it's the start, the middle, the end of like a band's career, and they just happen to just strike gold with everything on the album. It's not just one song, it's just everything. And it's just, why did all that, like during the writing process of an album, all just come? It's not even like, okay, the first two songs it was going good and then it got worse and then it got better, or it got worse and it got worse. Like how long, like of a period of time did they write this album for? Maybe they spent like months on this, and during the whole thing it just worked out perfectly and was all consistent. And it's like, how does that happen? And when it does, it's like you should count yourself lucky. So it's like, you know, when you have something like this that you can just go and listen to, and if you haven't heard it, it's something that's you know, it's really worth doing. Check out, I would say Rollin'. Rollin's like their biggest track ever. Rollin', Full Nelson, Living It Up, and Hot Dog. I would say they're the best on this album. Yeah, like literally legendary songs that you don't get anywhere else. Um, let's see. Slayer. Now, Slayer. Um, this is, I think this might be the only Slayer album that I own. Now the thing is with Slayer is they are, even though that they're quite a heavy and even like a controversial thrash band, because they always try to just be different to the stuff that everyone liked, just because it's sort of like, why is everyone appeasing to the media? It's kind of, okay, we just want to be the people that are ugly, that everyone hates, just so it's like, yeah, you hate us, whatever, we don't care. But the thing is, they're so famous because they actually still tried to write music that was sounded really good, that was actually like good for human consumption. And that's the vibe that I get from this album, where I like every song on it. And just generally, if you haven't heard Slayer, or and you know you like metal, or you haven't heard this album, or you haven't like listened to it much, where you might have only heard Disciple or Bloodline, because Disciple's like the main song, or like the first one people hear, because it's pretty much like the first main track on this album. And Bloodline has a music video. I remember seeing Bloodline on TV all the time. I would seriously just check out this album. See if you can listen to it like on Spotify and go through the tracks and stuff, because they're all really enjoyable metal tracks. and like from like other albums from Slayer, like Rain in Blood, and I can't remember. I think it's Christ Illusion. Like on that album, I like the songs like Jihad and like what is it? I think Cult, and it's the same thing again where it's just catchy metal songs. So that's where you just kind of learn that Slayer were generally, or like as much as they could, were about writing songs that were really enjoyable for people. So and this is no exception. So I would really recommend checking this one out. What is it? God Hates Us All. Yeah, it's sick. Um, yeah, sick album. Right, this is Disturbed's second album. Now, this one, so like this is what came after The Sickness. Now, Prayer is an amazing song. Liberate is so catchy. Intoxication, I love that tune so much. And it's like these tunes, again, it's like they just sound so good. Like Disturbed got to where they are because they are just so, like the songs were just so enjoyable. So it's like if you haven't heard this, again, check it out. Um, but this is one of those albums where it's kind of like it doesn't really have a song that sticks out aside from maybe Prayer. Um, but I like that where like albums they, it's not like, oh, they've got like one really good track and then the rest like suck. It's like, again, they're just songs to enjoy. I mean, maybe you might listen to some of these tracks and go like, nah, like it's kind of boring or whatever. But for me, I've been listening to this album for years and it's really good. For me, Disturbed, their peak was like the first, second, and third albums. The fourth one was pretty good, Indestructible, but it wasn't as good as the first three. But within the first three, I say this is the least strongest. So it's good. I like it a lot. But it's not as the Sickness over there. It's not the Sickness, but I'd say it's still worth checking out if you want to hear some good new tunes. Sigur Rós. Now these guys are like, it's all like, I don't know much about the genre. It's like ambient music apparently, but like it's based. The thing is, I like metal, rap, um, dance music, like that Goa Trance that I was showing you, and then emotional music. So sort of like Nothing Else Matters by Metallica, like it's emotional, or like what I would call emotional, whatever. And these guys, they just write songs that sound like that. So for me, that's good. And this whole album is absolutely great. Immediately from when I heard the first track, I was like, whoa, this is like the sort of stuff that I like, that emotional stuff, the sad sort of stuff. And this is basically a whole album of that. And these guys are absolute geniuses. Actually, like how they write their songs are just insane. Like when you listen to, I'd say like listen to like the last track on this album. It's like quite a big epic track, and it's just like, how did they make that music? How did they make those sounds? And then again, it's just like these sort of like emotional pieces. So for me, the genre was, it was great. It's approved of. That's what I like, and the songs as well are insanely high quality and creative. Um, Sigur Rós, I don't know the name of it. It's like sort of like brackets. You see like brackets and like when you put like a word in brackets. So if you type in like Sigur Rós and then put like these two brackets, like the punctuation, um, you'll find the album. And honestly, all the songs on this are incredible. I think I've got. This is like another album by Sigur Rós. The songs are a little bit less emotional, but I think they're a bit more like creative, and they're still like really fascinating. I don't really have much to say about it because it's just kind of like, okay, it blew me away with what what they've done on the tracks. Um, they're all the track names. Um, I think that's like a thanks. Um, like you know what they usually have in the album, like thanking people and stuff, their family and their friends and stuff. But yeah, like it's you know, if maybe if you check out that other album, maybe check this one out. I mean, I don't you know, I can't even remember what this album's called. I don't think it says it anywhere on it. I've I've only got one hand 'cause I'm holding the camera with the other. But yeah, like maybe just as a thing, you can check this out first or just check it out in general. It's like do it on a whim. You might like it. I mean, these guys are incredible songwriters, some of the best in the world, I would say. So you know, you're not going to be left out by listening to this album. You're not going to be wasting your time. But the other one I find is more emotional. So if you like sort of I don't really know how to explain it. Just like when metal bands do like the songs with like the clean guitars, and it's just insanely emotional because they have all that aggression, and when they do the soft stuff, it's just insanely sad. Um, you know that's right up my alley. But this stuff, this album, it's not as emotional as I say, but the pieces are great. Yeah, if you check out the Wikipedia page, you'll find this album, and then you know you can check it out. Um, this Limp Bizkit album is the same one as the last one, but this one's censored. So whenever you know there's a swear word in the lyrics, they blank it out. And hot dog, I'm pretty sure Fred Durst, the singer, he says fuck like 40 times. So like half of like the vocals in that track is just blanked out. It's so ridiculous. That other one that I had was actually from a charity shop that I bought it in a charity shop. The uncensored version, the first copy of it that I showed you. Um, and I basically needed that because you're not going to listen to that album with half the tracks without the vocals. Now this stuff, I don't want to talk about this because it's just in here because all my CDs were in this box. But that stuff over there, I got that from like I mean you see like local bands, but I want this to be about you know like the CDs that I bought and stuff. This I think is the last album of Goa Trance that I've got, and this is the weakest out of the three. But again, it's like you know, check it out if you want. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's kind of like I just prefer the tracks on the other two albums a bit more. But again, it's like I can imagine it'd be exciting for you to just check out some random album and see what you think of it, and you have no idea what it's gonna be. I mean, like, look at this. Like, what is this? You know, check it out. Just check it out. You know, my favorite songs. Well, my favorite song is Ganesha Pramana, um, and Bells of Sarnath. It's like yeah, it's I like either this stuff. It's like Indian trance, or it's like people from different countries basically making this music, and it's still Indian trance. I think this is from somewhere like some person in Europe. But yeah, it's all like I say, like Indian trance music. It's really good. Uh, but like I say, this isn't my favorite out of the three of the ones that I've got, but it's still really good. Now this thing here, this is me. Basically, this isn't my debut EP. Um, I've got a debut EP. An EP is just a small album, which is why it's only got 5 songs. I think you need more than 25 minutes of music for something to be considered an album. Um, this is me in 2014. I still have my hair, like I'm not bald like I am now. But yeah, like I made 100 copies of these that I just gave out for free. Uh, I signed a few of them, but since then I've made an album. So I've basically got this debut EP, and then my debut album. But since CD players are phased out, I don't have physical copies of my album. So this is called Start of a New Beginning, debut EP. My debut album is called First Steps, and that's all the stuff that I've released basically. My EP and my album. So yeah, you know I've been talking about these emotional songs. That's what I do. That's my genre. And this is 5 songs of that sort of music. So if you want like really sort of like sort of emotional stuff, like beautiful guitar, solo guitar, uh, check this out. Now, I mentioned Master of Puppets. When I think about this album, I always think about um, like, if you heard this now, would you care about it? And I do think yes, because when I was listening to this stuff, you can tell that it's like music that people thought about, that isn't just some stuff like thrown together. And I was listening to Battery when I thought of that. That isn't even like the best song on here. So it's kind of like, if this was like a small band and you heard this and they handed you this album for free just for like a demo, I'd be like, like these guys, this is pretty strong. But the fact that these guys managed to do this in like 1986, it's just crazy. Um, I say it's like one of the best metal albums because it's like, to be honest, aside from what I like, I can't really think of something that's like greater than this. So that's why I do say it's like one of the best. And it's kind of like, and I think it's the best Metallica album too because all the songs on it are like very good. I mean, it's like, okay, Orion might not be as good as Master of Puppets or whatever, but or like Leper Messiah isn't like an absolute epic like Master of Puppets, but all the songs are still very, very strong. And then when I think to like Ride the Lightning, which is probably my second favorite Metallica album, I don't like all the songs like as much. Like Fade to Black is like the best one. I can't really think of like the others on the album, like For Whom the Bell Tolls, Creeping Death. Like Ride the Lightning, like I can't even remember the last time I listened to that, or Trapped Under Ice. I just think that the sort of random album tracks on this one are just slightly stronger. And same with like these tracks against the ones and Justice for All. I personally think the best Metallica albums are Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All. And I just think like the random album tracks on here, so most of the album is better than like most of the album from like Justice as well. So you just basically have like, this is like the best Metallica, and then out of everything else that I've ever heard, it's kind of like, this is for 1986. This is very, very good. Like no one else went to like these lengths to write these like very like sort of epic like pieces. Like no one even cares that half of these pieces are like 6-8 minutes because they just listened to it and they just took it for what it was and knew that it was just great music. It didn't even matter how long it was. No one even realized the songs at 8 minutes because they just, you just listen to them and you just enjoy listening to them. Yeah, if you haven't heard this, then and you like metal music, I mean, I don't even understand how that would be possible. But if you haven't heard this, then I'd check it out because there's no way you wouldn't like at least a few of these tracks. Now, System of a Down, right? I don't understand how these guys managed to make music that's so catchy, and I love this album in particular because the riffs are just massive. They're just heavy, whereas I feel like the music they wrote before this album, like their first album, was just a bit like not very likable. And then the album after this, like Steal This Album, it was kind of like this, but some of the stuff, it just wasn't as good, just wasn't as likable. But this one, it's just a massive, catchy riffs, and every track is just incredible. That if you've like never heard this album, seriously check it out. It's a bit weird compared to like other metal bands, but it's, I mean, after you've listened to like one song, you'll kind of be over that fact. Like you won't care. I mean, I remember hearing Shimmy like when I was like, I don't even know, probably like 12 years old, and I thought it was very strange. But like Chop Suey and Aerials, which are on this album, Chop Suey's got to be their best track. Aerials has got to be like their second or third best track. But either way, all the other tracks like Prison Song, Deer Dance, Forest, Atwa, um, well, ATWA, like they're so catchy. and just the riffs are massive. So I would love for you guys to hear this if you haven't heard it before. And it's System of a Down at their best, and there's nothing else like this album in the world. Soulfly. Now, Max Cavalera, the guy who made the band Sepultura and then made this band, the guy talks about writing guitar riffs as if it's an art. Like, it's really important to make incredible riffs, like incredible music material, and that's the only thing that I need to know that this guy, whenever there's a section in any of his songs, so every section of every track on this album, for example, I've got multiple albums by Soulfly, is something that someone has spent a lot of time and effort to make guitar riffs that are incredible. And it really is, like, every track on here is amazing. And how often do you get to say that? Only the stuff in this box, in my opinion, is pretty much stuff like that, except some of the albums where I think, okay, maybe it's not, maybe some album in here is probably my least favorite. So, but Soulfly is probably my third favorite band after Metallica and Ectomorph, because the music is just so good, and it just sucks that I've never heard any other band aside from, well, yeah, like Metallica, Ectomorph, Sepultura, which is basically Soulfly, that just sounds this good. And it's so criminal that these guys aren't more known. If you haven't heard this album, listen to this now. This is probably Soulfly's best album, I would say. And I don't understand how you can be someone who listens to metal and not like the songs on here. So this is the first album I can say, or maybe not, but I was gonna say, like, where, like, if you do check this out, you'll just like it. It it is really, really good. And to be honest, that it really would be a shame if you didn't like the stuff on here, if it just isn't, for whatever reason, your taste, because I love it so much. And it's like the tracks on here are just utterly, what's the word, quintessential. Like, Bleak, it is so heavy, and it's like I've never heard anything that's so heavy. I mean, you have death metal that's hectic, stuff that's just ridiculous, but Bleak is just so dark, and like Front Lines, like about like war, like how all it does is just destroy. Babylon, which is one of like Soulfly's like most like iconic tracks. It's just an incredible piece of music. It's like, man, I wish I could have more tunes like the stuff on here. Now, this album, again, like Soulfly, are groove metal, so like thrash, kind of basically just catchy thrash oriented riffs, which to me sounds perfect. If you knew any bands like that, please tell me. And it's kind of like, okay, if you just hear, like, Prophecy is one of the best songs I've ever heard in my life. And it's like, man, I can't believe there's people out there that are fortunate enough to have not heard that, and so then they can hear that now and just have an incredible song to listen to. Like Defeat You, I Believe, Bohada, so like Porada, like the just incredible pieces of metal music. That's just, it's basically written, like I say, like the guy behind the band, like with the riffs, is literally just written to be incredible. It's just like stuff that this dude thinks you'll like as much as possible. It's like, I'm very lucky that there's someone out there who has my back as much as this guy, who wants to give me music that's that good. It's just like, if you haven't heard this stuff, check it out. Soulfly Prophecy. Now, when I was talking about Slayer, I was talking about like how like they're just like writing songs that are so catchy, and I mentioned Rain in Blood, and again, it's like like, I think this is like their biggest album, and I listened to it and I was like, oh, I can see why, and I can see why this kind of put them on the map, and why they're not a joke band. They're a band that are really here for people. trying to make music that people can enjoy. So if you haven't given this like a proper listen, I would, because it's like you can pretty much just listen to any of these tracks and be like, oh nice, I've got a new song to put on my phone or on my iPod that I've got now that's going to help me through life. You know what I mean? It's really good to have this by your side. Like it's just very catchy, and like well thought out metal music. Some of this stuff, like again, this is from like a local band. This is just like some bullshit and my dad put on a computer CD for me and shit like that. Now this is the only rap album that I own, even though rap is like my second favorite genre. I was talking about like the emotional stuff. Um, Now, metal and those emotional, like sad, clean tone guitar stuff or whatever instrumental emotional tunes, both metal and that stuff, I say is like tied for first place for my favorite genres of music, and then rap is my second favorite. Now, Tech Nine, I think, Tech Nine is a rapper, and he's literally a god, and his tracks are incredible. Now the thing is, Twisted Insane is more what I want to hear from rap, which is just insanely heavy musical material. Whenever we speak a syllable, with words, we speak a musical note, and whenever people rap, they tend to just say the same musical note over and over and over and over again. So when they rap, you're basically just getting like a metal riff, like when somebody does like a rhythm on like a just on a guitar string, like on the lowest string, like a palm muted riff. Now Twisted Insane really kind of like all his stuff is just like basically doing that. It's just fast like rap, and it's just like that as musical material is exactly what I want to hear. It's basically just groove metal with his voice, and it's insanely heavy and dark. So that's why this guy is actually probably the rapper that I listen to the most, even though Tech Nine, I find is more fascinating, but I just find I like more songs by this dude. Like with Tech Nine, I usually like about half of the songs on his albums, but like with Twisted Insane, I pretty much like every track. Now, this album, yeah, it's very good, but I would just, if I think most people watching this video are gonna be metalheads. I would just recommend some songs for you. Being like so, Twisted Insane, that's the artist. The Last Demon, 100 round clip, and I would probably say In the Dirt and Underground Psycho. Now he does have some other, as he has one other vocalist on In the Dirt and on Underground Psycho. On both of those tracks, he's got a different person doing vocals with him, but you'll still hear Twisted Insane and what he does, and sort of like the sort of backing tracks that he tends to use and stuff, and sort of like the vibe of his music. Now, I actually haven't purchased any albums in a while, which is actually why I haven't like a lot of this stuff I bought quite a while ago, which is actually why I don't have any Tech Nine stuff. I would love to show you some Tech Nine stuff. If you want to listen to Tech Nine, I'd recommend like the songs Midwest Choppers 2, Face Paint, and probably I'd say Worldwide Choppers. There's other, again, with rap, if you don't know, they get other people to do rap on their songs as well. Worldwide Choppers, there's a lot of people on that track by Tech Nine, and there's two other guys on Midwest Choppers too. But regardless, you'll still hear Tech Nine, and that guy is incredible. And Phase Paint, that song, is just him on that one. Now, this this is a metal band by who are from Taiwan, and the stuff does have a lot of recorded like sort of like traditional Taiwanese like or sort of like Oriental instruments, and even just sort of like string sections like violins and stuff. But the writing with the metal band, like so the band itself without like all the backing from all the recording instruments, is insanely well done. Like it's so smart. They sound like quintessential metal tracks, and the sort of effort and quality with like the other recorded instruments and how they use that to complement the track is just as great. And so overall, the tracks are they're very good. Now, if you like, I would just recommend listening to Takeo. I mean, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but that and Broken Jade, they're like the two biggest tracks on here, and I would be very surprised if you didn't like one of those if you listen to metal music. And it's so worth listening to them because they'll probably be. I mean, that Takeo tune is one of the best metal songs I've ever heard. So yeah, I would seriously. Yeah, they're called Thonic, even though it's got a CH. People call them like Chthonic, but now you just pronounce it Thonic, like Thonic. The Takasago Army. Again, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but yeah. Um, yeah, I'm just gonna have a quick drink. I've literally been talking for almost an hour. Now, let's see. Hold on. Got some Sepultura stuff. Right. This album is the best thrash metal album I've ever heard, and I don't see how anyone can even argue it. And I'm not even that much of like a like because I don't know, like I've listened to a lot of thrash albums and I'm not really that much of a fan of a lot of it, not because I don't like thrash, but I just find, to be honest, I say this is the reason because I've just heard so much, like, well, not I've heard thrash that's just, like, in my opinion, is just the best. So anything that's even like 20% off, like if this is 100%, if something's like 80%, I'm like, nah, that's not anywhere near as good as Beneath the Remains, or it's like, nah, it doesn't, it's got to be as good as this, or I don't like it. I don't understand how, like, it's another example of like a band doing stuff where it's just like, I don't understand how they managed to do this. I don't understand how human beings even wrote music as good as this. I reckon Mozart would be impressed by this album. Literally just listen to it. If you listen to metal, listen to this and all the different ideas and sections and stuff. It's like, because the thing is, like, for me, like, I write music in a key, right? So a key is like, okay, you have a group of musical notes that sound good when you use those to write a song with. Like, they all work together. So you write music using those notes. You write music using like that group, because it'll work for you basically. Now this and there's basically lots of different groups. So there's lots of different keys, and you can write music in different groups. They all sound different. Um, Now this album, it's like, it's in key, like it all sounds good, obviously, but it's almost as if like they just did their own thing and just managed to come out with just these pieces of music that no one else has ever done, that were waiting to kind of be like unleashed. And it's just, I don't understand how they managed to do this without any guidance from like a musical key. Like, okay, you write music using these notes from the key that you're writing music in, and that's how you create your riffs and stuff. But this, it's just, they kept coming up with riffs, just ideas, and then they put them all together. Like, sort of figured out which ones work best where and stuff, and they just came out with these pieces of music that are just some of the best like ideas ever created in musical history. It's just ridiculous. It's like I don't understand how they managed to do it. Um, Now this is the album that followed Beneath the Remains. Now I would say like Beneath the Remains just slightly impresses me more. But again, this, if Beneath the Remains is like the best thrash metal album, I mean, I know Master of Puppets is a thrash metal album, but I just kind of see it as just a music album. This, like the Sepultura, Beneath the Remains, and Arise albums, are just incredible thrash metal music. Obviously, I mean, I've said what I've said about Beneath the Remains. Now this is just, I don't know what it is. It's just a tiny bit less interesting, but that is still utterly incredible. And again, if you haven't heard this, like you haven't heard Sepultura's music before, especially Arise. Arise is quite mainstream because of how amazing and unbelievably monumental it is. With it still being genuine heavy as hell thrash, and Arise is probably the heaviest song on here, and it's still got such incredible like mainstream attention because of how epic it is. So even if you just hear Arise, if you haven't heard this stuff before, and if you want to listen to the album, just listen to the whole thing, and you'll just hear just incredible pieces of music. It's so genius. It's just unreal. And I'm just so thankful that they wrote it basically. Um, this shouldn't be in there. Spanish guitar music. I don't even know where I've got that from. I don't listen to that. Now Soulfly. Again, like sort of thrash groove metal. This is when like the kind of basically the two albums I've shown you was Dark Ages and Prophecy. Now Prophecy came out before Dark Ages, and then after Dark Ages they made Conquer. Then after that they made this. Now Prophecy, Dark Ages, and Conquer are like their peak, and then they made this, and I feel like it's just songs by Soulfly. But Soulfly is, the stuff sounds very enjoyable, but it's just Soulfly. It's not like the best of Soulfly. Again, if you want to just check out like some new metal music, check out a new album. Check it out if you like metal and you're interested. Check out Soulfly Omen, but it's not Soulfly at their best. Prophecy, Dark Ages, and Conquer are their best albums. But yeah, this is kind of when they were then just kind of writing more songs. It wasn't, wow, this is some of the best music I've ever heard in my life. You know what I mean? Ride the Lightning. I've already said, like mentioned about this, like, if Master Pop is just like basically like the best or one of the best metal albums ever. I'm sorry if I contradict myself saying some albums like the best album ever, then I say it's say something else is the best album or whatever, but I'm trying to be consistent. If you want any clarification about anything, I'll mention it in like you can write me a comment and I'll reply. Yeah, this is my second favorite Metallica album. Again, for when it was written, it's basically like writing Mozart with metal. It's ridiculous. The intro solo and the outro solo on Fade to Black is one of the best stuff ever, and the clean acoustic, like clean tone guitar arpeggio at the start of Fade to Black is my favorite acoustic sort of or clean tone guitar material that I've ever heard. If you haven't heard this album, you're in for a treat. To hear stuff like Ride the Lightning, Fight Fire with Fire, and yeah, obviously Fade to Black for the first time, Creeping Death. You're in for a treat. If you haven't heard this, just listen to this album. It's great. Now, hold on. This, I bought this because Cannibal Corpse are incredible songwriters. These guys just write incredible pieces of music. But I'm not too. It's death metal, and I'm not too much into death metal because I find the riffs just aren't about being likable. Metallica wrote riffs that are trying to be likable. That's exactly what Soulfly tried to do and what Sepultura tried to do. Like Max Cavalera, again, who's the guy who basically made the bands Sepultura and Soulfly. Now, Cannibal Corpse, I reckon, do write riffs to be as likable as possible, as great as possible, but while still being death metal. But to me, the music of death metal just fundamentally doesn't sound as good as like something like I say, like Metallica or Soulfly. So it just comes off that it's like, okay, you basically just chose to write riffs or record riffs that aren't really as good as I would like them to be because they just don't sound that good to me because of what it is. But if you're interested, like if you don't really listen to death metal, um, and you're curious, I would check it out. Or if you do listen, I mean, I don't see how you could listen to death metal and not know Cannibal Corpse and especially this album. So even just out of interest, I would check this out. Tomb of the Mutilated. This is probably one of my least favorite albums out of this box, just because it's not quite what I like, and I shouldn't really have bought it. But see, like Hammer Smash Face is my favorite Cannibal Corpse song, and it's obviously my favorite song on this album in that case. But that's because it just sounds like a general metal song, not a death metal song. Um, and I find again with it being likable stuff that Cannibal Corpse, obviously trying to write good pieces of music, it just sounds like better stuff than the rest because it's just more my kind of thing. But Hammer Smash Face, Addicted to Vaginal Skin, I mean, you could pretty much just leave it at that if you want. But it's really interesting to listen to just because you won't hear stuff like this if you don't actually specifically listen to death metal and stuff. So I would check this out just out of like curiosity if you want to hear just some really creative like sort of examples of musical material that is actually genius, um, and well, it's just something completely unique essentially. The band are very talented. Now this shouldn't really be in here because this band were all the rage back in the UK back when in like 2008, sort of around that time. And I love pretty much every track on this album except for the last one, Forever and Always. But you kind of, it's only because you haven't heard anything else back when you're like a teenager or whatever, and you just get what's marketed to you. Now, I'm not saying Bullet for My Valentine aren't good, but the stuff's very concise. It's kind of like if Metallica had a child and the child wrote metal music. It's kind of like this is like Metallica's kid. It's very sort of concise. When you listen to Scream Aim Fire, you'll sort of see it. Eye of the Storm, Waking the Demon. I would just check those out to be honest. Hearts Burst into Fire too. You could check out as well, but that's a bit more of like a melodic track. The others are a bit more heavy. But again, if you just like metal music, I reckon you'll quite enjoy it. Like it's kind of like when you're young to metal music, when you're new to it, you'll think this stuff is really good because it is catchy, but it's just a bit. It kind of sacrifices like creativity and interesting material, like far out kind of stuff, for just being something that's good for like a mainstream audience kind of thing. So if you don't mind that, if you're still okay to listen to something that's kind of like not very, I guess, interesting, like Eye of the Storm, it's like basic, it's like it's just features like basic metal thrash riffs kind of, but it's very likable if you don't have a problem with that. Um, where it's like, oh yeah, I'd still find it really interesting. So then you would probably just find it actually really enjoyable because it's meant to be catchy, but it's almost like too catchy. It's almost just like really just like kind of, I don't want to say the word stupid, but it's just a bit too like, I don't know, young metal music. It's not like Sepultura's Beneath the Remains where you just think, how did they come up with these songs, like these sections and this arrangement of this massive incredible piece? These are just really concise. It's just kind of a like microwavable metal music. um, Now I'm looking for. I wanted to see if I could find Disturbed's third album, because I've spoken about the first and second, but I'm sure we'll get to it. Maschine. Now this album again. I don't think I'm gonna say this many more times, but Machine Head's first album is probably the greatest example of like a quintessential metal album that is like, you know, like when, like I said about Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory, like that Linkin Park album, like when a band just comes out with their first ever thing that is like, hey, we have this idea, this thing that is just us, that you can't find anywhere else, and we want people to hear this and enjoy it, and it's absolutely incredible because of the quality and the fact that there's nothing else like it. And that's what this is. This, in my opinion, like you know, it should be a thing that like bands shouldn't be pressured into making more than one album. Like, you know, like how you have like theater shows, and it's just a show, and then they go on tour doing that show, that play, like a pantomime. Like, bands should, like, this should be a thing, like where bands just make one album, and the band just is that one album. Like, aside from the fact that Machine Head made The Blackening, for example, Machine Head should have just made this and just been this, because it is just incredible, and they never managed to do it again. And this is what Machine Head just should have been. You need to hear this album if you haven't heard it, if you're a metal fan. Um, I can't explain it in words. You just need to check out. It's just nobody's ever done this, and it's unbelievably heavy. It is all Machine Head. It's like all them. It's unique, and it's just unbelievable quality metal music. I mean, I'd be very lucky if I was hearing that for the first time. One of the greatest albums to grace the metal music world. Um, Now, when I said about Soulfly, like their peak, it was Prophecy, Dark Ages, and Conquer. They had like a 3 album sort of span that was just their peak, and it's just absolutely incredible metal. Now, this came out before Prophecy, and I love this track too. Like, sorry, this album. Now the others, they are, like I say, like thrash core, like sort of catchy thrash riffs with like a lot of grooving, a lot of rhythm to be likable and enjoyable, and just want to make you throw down. Now this is a bit more kind of groove metal, where it's got even more groove and sort of like a less heavier guitar tone. But again, to me that sounds awesome. So like, if you wanna again, like, check something out that's sort of like, yeah, I'd love to hear like some riffs that are just absolutely unbelievably catchy and enjoyable, and that come from a guy that's just trying to write insanely great songs for human consumption. I would check this out as well, Soulfly 3. I mean, I would say like you could pretty much kind of include this one along with Prophecy, Dark Ages, and Conquer, with being like Soulfly's best. It's not their absolute best, but it's like the songs are still absolutely great. Now, we all know about this. Metallica's Saint Anger. What really bothers me about people when they talk about this album is they're completely missing the point about what like the negatives of this album is. Um, you know, everyone just wants to say, oh, the snare, like the snare on the drums is bad. Like, in my top favorite 3 songs ever, right? Being I Choke by Ectomorph and I Wear My Skin by 1 Minute Silence. The snare in those songs sound like a solid hit of metal, like like a trash can, right? Metal snares, like metal drums, sound like a snare in metal songs, sound like a solid hit of sound that sound quite metallic. So why are people just all of everything that you've ever heard to do with the snare on this album. Why was that even a thing that people wanted to talk about? Like, people are just insane. Now, I just want to talk about how, like, what I think is, what I think is like a negative to this album is a lot of the songs just sound kind of strange. Like, a lot of the riffs, like if you just listen to all within no sorry the unnamed feeling, you'll sort of real like there's a part in that song where like the riff, I think it's kind of the start, like the guitar, it's doing like this sort of like chugging, this palm muted thing, and it just kind of sounds like ducks. It sounds like ducks quacking, and it's just like, that's so weird. It's like, why, the best stuff on this album, again, it's just like anything to do with music that is made to be incredibly catchy and likable. That's the whole point of even using a riff in your song. It's supposed to be good, right? But some of the stuff on here, it's almost as if like they're just trying to make sort of creative songs instead of trying to be likable. Kind of like that Lulu thing that they did, like that sort of concept album. Now, most of the stuff on here I think is good, catchy material. Aside from some stuff that I just think sounds just a bit odd. It's not that I don't like it, it's just, as a talking point, I'd say that is actually what is the sort of maybe the least favorable parts of this album. It's just a bit odd. But like, if you haven't heard Frantic, I mean, that is an amazing song. It's very simple, like the riffs, but it needed to be made. Like, the riffs in that song, it's like, it's almost as if Metallica didn't make a song with those riffs, someone else would have. Now, Shoot Me Again is probably my fifth favorite Metallica song, after stuff like Master of Puppets, One, Fade to Black, and Nothing Else Matters. It is so good. Um, if you haven't heard that, so again, like Frantic and Shoot Me Again, I'd just check it out. And if you want to check out the album, now, like, yeah, like, if you want to check out the album, check it out. But I was gonna say, like, Some Kind of Monster, right? Like how you have those albums where like they put the best song first, and then the second song is like almost like maybe passable, and then the third song, by the time it gets to the third song, you're like, I don't even like this one. And that's what it's kind of like here. It's like Frantic is like the best one. Saint Anger, it's like, maybe, and then Some Kind of Monster, it's like, maybe after the main riff it gets a bit boring, and people then just go, all right, I'm not even bothered with this album. They don't even listen past Some Kind of Monster. Right, don't even worry about Some Kind of Monster, forget about it then. Listen to Invisible Kid, listen to Sweet Amber, listen to The Unnamed Feeling, listen to All Within My Hands. The only songs that I don't like on this is Purify, My World, and Dirty Window. But that's just my opinion. Like, I like, Some Kind of Monster and Frantic are some of my favourite songs ever, and Metallica songs. And the other ones that I named, like Invisible Kid, Sweet Amber, The Unnamed Feeling, and All Within My Hands, are really enjoyable songs too. So if you haven't even listened to this properly, I would do it. Um, Now, I've shown you guys, I'm talking a lot about Soulfly, and I said, like, okay, you got that Soulfly 3 album, and then you had Prophecy, Dark Ages, and Conquer, and then I shown you Omen, and I was like, okay, it's Soulfly, it's just kind of Soulfly songs. If you like the sound of the genre, I would check that out maybe. But it wasn't them at their best. It wasn't Prophecy, Dark Ages, or Conquer. Now, after Omen, they made this, Enslaved. Now, this one, again, it's not at their best, but it's a bit darker than their usual. This is probably their darkest album, which is why I'm not too much of a fan, because I'm not too much of a fan of like dark metal. It's more like, I like stuff that's just sort of like raw, like guerrilla music. It's just like, heavy, thrash kind of oriented stuff, like thrash core and stuff, kind of like Pantera kind of stuff. But I'm not really too much of a fan of Pantera, but I won't get into that because I've got too much other stuff to talk about. But this album, I can just say, I'd just recommend you some songs that are like my favorite ones on this. I really, really do enjoy. So I would check out Redemption of Man by God, if you just want to write this down or whatever. Plata or Plomo, and Gladiator. I mean, I'd just check those out if you want, to be honest. Or if you want to check out everything, you can do. Now, Soulfly 8. On the end of all the Soulfly albums, they always make like a song, like an instrumental track, an emotional sort of piece. And the one on this album, Soulfly 8, is amazing. It's not a metal song, but I would check that out too. So like Gladiator, Redemption of Man by God, Plateau Plomo, and Soulfly 8, if you feel like checking that out. Yeah. Now, I was talking about Sepultura Beneath the Remains. Um, Now, I was saying that that was just utterly incredible. Now, Sepultura found sort of their footing when they came with Beneath the Remains. Now, this was before that, and it's still thrash, but it's just kind of like a bit tatty. Like it's like it's like sometimes you'll be listening to a song, then it will just come in with a riff randomly. It doesn't kind of gel that smoothly. It's a bit sort of primitive, but if you want to check out another thrash album, I'll check this out, and you'd probably like it because some of the riffs are quite catchy. But if I've got to recommend any song, Troops of Doom, because that is one of their best songs regardless, and that does happen to be on this album. So I mean, I would just check that out if you want. Sepultura fans will tell you Troops of Doom is one of their best, and so would Max Cavalera, the main dude of this band. Not that the other people in Soulfly and Sepultura aren't the main guys, but it's just kind of like, he has done a lot of stuff for, with all these songs, all these riffs that he's written and stuff. And, and even he would tell you that Troops of Doom is one of the best. So, yeah, Schizophrenia, another thrash album, Troops of Doom is definitely worth checking out. Now, Death Magnetic for me with Metallica is basically classic Metallica but written in like 2008, which I think is a very good idea. Now, like when you listen to The Day That Never Comes, it's like, wow, that's like, something that sounds like One, but like a modern version. It's the songs are very, very good. Like, I personally don't even like their latest album, Hardwired. I just think with everything that Metallica can do, they almost sound like the songs on Hardwired they just wrote in like 5 seconds just to churn something out. And then it's like, oh, but then what would they sound like if they actually put in all the effort and with all the skill that they have, that they've learned over years and years and years to write who they are, who they always were, the stuff that they used to write. That's what you would get, which is why this album is good and why it's just, you know, something that's really worth your time. If you don't want to listen to the whole album, just listen to like The Day That Never Comes, The End of the Line, and All Nightmare Long. But I would seriously check this out if you haven't heard it. It's a very, very, very good metal album, and again, one of Metallica's best. I would say this is like my fourth favorite. Um, after like Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All. Now, speaking of And Justice for All, one is the best popular music song ever written. So basically, the best song ever written, in my opinion. And I don't see what else you can do different. You can either write something that's the same or something that's worse. So check that out if you haven't heard it. The other songs are the thing is, this album, it's been said as well in like an interview by like the bassist, that they were like, whose idea was it to make these songs so progressive, like creative, like it's still good catchy thrash metal, like a genre that we all know and love, but they're so like, like how Metallica stuff is like, the 7-8 minute track songs. It's like this is when they taught that to the, they're that long because of all the sections and ideas that they have in the tracks, and this is where they took that to the max. I think it was, it's just musical material after musical material, just sort of arranged in a way that's just so like vast, and in turn just makes this so like interesting and stuff. It's just, again, it's just how do they do this? This is kind of like Beneath the Remains if it was like Metallica, but I just find maybe on Master Puppets, I just find those tracks are just slightly more enjoyable. Like you'll listen to like Damage Incorporated, and it's just really fast, and you just listen to it, and it's good times. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like when was the last time I actually genuinely listened to like Harvester of Sorrow or The Frayed Ends of Sanity, even though they are very likable and insanely interesting to hear. Yeah, I mean, I'm running out of space. Stuff's falling off the bed. Anyway, yeah, it's kind of like if you haven't heard it, check it out. And one is incredible. So, well, like I say, the best track ever. Metallica's first album. Now, when I bought this, like I listened to it and stuff, but it's not really. Again, I find Metallica found themselves with like Ride the Lightning, um, and it's kind of like okay, well, this was before that. This is their first album, and it's just kind of like it is what it is. But Metallica are the biggest metal band because of how enjoyable their stuff is, and they weren't that at this time. So what does that mean? That means that these songs, um, well, I wouldn't say they're not as enjoyable, but it's kind of like, well, how else would you put that? It's kind of like, you know, they became known because of what they did after this. And why were they known? Because people really enjoyed it. I don't like these songs as much. If it's your cup of tea, you will love this and you won't like the other albums as much. But for me, I like the usual Metallica. But if you haven't heard, like Seek and Destroy and probably like Hit the Lights and Whiplash are like the biggest ones like on this album. But I mean, if you're interested, I mean, maybe just take the time. Okay, maybe this is the day you check out all of Metallica's first album, and you might. And that's the thing; they're all generally good. But again, I don't know the last time I listened to Phantom Lord, uh, Motor Breath, or even like Whiplash and stuff like that. And pretty much everything else, I'd rather like Machine Head's first album, Machine Head's The Blackening, Beneath the Remains, the Soulfly stuff, the Ectomorph stuff. I'd rather listen to that than listen to Motor Breath. You know what I mean? So, um, either you've heard some of these tracks or you haven't, and then if you are just curious and you might like them if you hear them, I'd check it out. Now, Testament are like kind of you got the big four: Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, and Anthrax. Then I say like Testament and Exodus are like the next thrash bands that you kind of hear about because of their sort of how enjoyable their tracks are. It's kind of like, okay, what is the game of music? It's about writing songs that people like, and you become as big as however many people think your music is enjoyable. So Testament is like the fourth biggest. So you would so by that logic, these guys should be pretty good. Now this album, I'd say is their best personally. But again, it's not like stuff that I would, because like my favorite bands are like Ectomorph, Metallica, Soulfly, Sepultura, and Mors Principium Est, which I don't have all their albums, but I should. I've only got one of their albums in here, but I'll get to that when I get to it. So it's kind of like I would rather listen to that than this stuff. But DNR is a very, very good song. One of the best metal songs ever. But I'd still put it sort of in the lower of the best songs ever. If they're in like the top 50, if it was in the top 50 metal songs ever, it would kind of be like like number 40. But it's so worth it. If you just want to hear DNR, I'd check that out. And again, it's like okay, they got the best song first. And like Down for Life is pretty enjoyable. They're all pretty enjoyable. If you haven't heard this and you want to hear like a new thrash album, you could check out. You probably like a few tracks. Now this, right, Ectomorph are my favourite band, right? They're thrashcore, so catchy thrash sort of groove riffs. And these guys are the ones who have this in their heart and soul, like that genre, that music. And this is my favorite album by them, and it's my favorite album of all time. Has my favorite song ever. My favorite song of all time is Gypsy, and my favorite thing that I've ever heard in music ever in my whole life is in Gypsy. And I think from memory, if you skip to 2 minutes 42, you will hear it. It's like this drop that happens in that song, and it's just the best thing I've ever heard. Just incredible, heavy, enjoyable metal music. I would sit if you haven't heard this album. Unfortunately, everyone likes that. That's the thing. I'm talking about Soulfly as if like people are gonna give a shit about that. When everyone, everyone I know's spoken about Soulfly, they're like, "Oh, aren't Soulfly that shit new metal band? Like new metal, like you know, that sort of like they talk about it as if it's like, oh, isn't that shit music?" And everyone, this is my video, so it's like I'm gonna talk about these bands as if how I feel about them. And I know people, if you even if you do listen to this, you're probably not gonna like it, but if you had my taste, this became my favorite album ever. So imagine if you were just about to discover that, how much you would enjoy these pieces. Hearing that after all the years of listening to music that you've heard, and then you still manage to find an album that you like that much, you would enjoy that so much. To hear something that great again, you know what I mean? Like hearing like some of the best albums ever for the first time. I mean, I know them. I don't understand that you can listen to music and not have that become one of your favorite songs ever. And like Gypsy, No Compromise, From Far Away, it's just absolutely incredible. Just check this album out, um, and see what you think. I mean, my favorite songs, yeah, like I Know Them, Gypsy, No Compromise, From Far Away, and Tear Apart. They're my favorite songs on here, and they're some of the best, incredible songs ever. When you look at that artwork, that's what you're gonna hear. Imagine that in music. It is so fucking tasteful and enjoyable. And honestly, I wish to God that you will like that album. Honestly, now Ectomorph again. When I say like the best albums ever, or like my favorite at least, like Master of Puppets, The Blackening, Chaos AD, and again we haven't gotten to The Blackening or Chaos AD yet. Blackening by Maschine, Chaos AD, Sepultura, and then I said about The Sickness by Disturbed. Now as well, I would say Ectomorph's 3 album span that I think is their best, kind of like Soulfly's Prophecy, Dark Ages, Conquer. With Ectomorph, you have Destroy, that one that I just shown you. And then Outcast. Actually, they had an album in between Instinct, but it's Destroy, Instinct, and Outcast that are their peak. So if I was saying all that about Destroy over there, this is like my next like favorite one by Ectomorph. And like I was saying about my favorite albums, it would also include those 3 albums by Ectomorph: Destroy, Instinct, and Outcast. And I said when I was talking about Saint Anger with the snare, I said the songs I Choke by Ectomorph and I Wear My Skin by 1 Minute Silence are in my top 3 favorite songs ever. Gypsy being my favorite actually. Have like a solid hit of sound for the snare. Now, I Choke, my whole point is I Choke is on this album. Probably like my second favorite song ever. And oh my, I just can't believe it. Like you could hear this for the first time, and I just cannot believe that you can be that fortunate. Every song on it is incredible. Now, Fuel My Fire is a cover of the band The Prodigy, right? So that's not their song, but everything else, it's just ridiculous. And if you can't be bothered to listen to the whole album, just listen to the first 3 tracks. I know I said, oh yeah, you get those albums where like the best song is like the first one, and the next one's a bit worse, then the third one's a bit worse again. The top 3, like the first 3 tracks, are probably my favorite. But the whole album is incredible. Like, I Confront My Enemy and Hell Is Here are probably then my next favourites, and they're all the way down at the bottom. Honestly, this album's really, really good. You know, if you like metal music, I don't understand how you can hear this and say, "Oh, this isn't enjoyable metal." It's literally the complete opposite. This is enjoyable metal. Literally, this is the dictionary definition of enjoyable metal songs. It's just made for enjoyment. It's ridiculous. Um, Now, I was talking about when I was talking about Ectomorph Instinct. This is the one in between, like Destroy and then Outcast. This is in between, and again, the exact same thing. The exact same thing that I said about those two goes for this as well. Just just songs that are good, enjoyable metal, and I don't understand how you can not enjoy them. If you want some recommendations, check out Show Your Fist, Set Me Free. To be honest, it's like the thing is with these albums, it's like every song is just enjoyable. It's not like they have like a hit song and all the rest suck. Like I love like I Break You, I Will, Until the End, and they weren't even the ones I recommended. I love Burn. That is amazing. And what I was gonna say was Set Me Free, Show Your Fist, and Fuck You All as like the recommendations. But I pretty much love all the others too. So it's like, to be honest, I would just check it out honestly. And if you don't like a track, skip to the next one and persevere and check them all out. Honestly, great metal album, and I don't think a lot of people know about it. And it really sucks that the effort they put in is going to waste. I can't believe that, one day I'm gonna die, and it's like, and people aren't gonna hear about this album, and it's like, this. It's almost as if this album just dies with me, and it's like, people, how many metal fans would enjoy that, and if people don't, it's almost as if, man, I don't understand how they don't. This shouldn't be in there. This is just. I think that was something by a local band. They all signed it and stuff. Um, Now after those three Ectomorph songs, they made What Doesn't Kill Me. Now it's not as good as those three, but I still, again, this band is just about writing enjoyable metal music. So the stuff's really simple, but it's catchy. And a lot of the riffs are really smart, and it's just about writing smart riffs. I mean, that's what music's about in general. It's just about writing music that's like enjoyable because of its got thought behind it, and that's what this. Again, you can really see that here. I love Scream, Rat War. You can just try those two if you want, or check out the album. A lot of people again will probably say that this is just complete bullshit, but see what you think. Um, Sepultura, right? This is when Sepultura kind of changed. Like they weren't doing like thrash anymore, and this was kind of like their own sort of, almost like their own style. I mean, obviously everything was their style anyway. Like I was saying about, I didn't understand how they could write something that's so great and themselves from Beneath the Remains and Arise. But they really sort of, the people like the guys in the band, like they're saying like this album was written from like their culture, like their heritage. So it's completely different, and it was sort of written from who they are and their life experiences and stuff. I'm not too much of a fan of this album. This is probably like my least favorite of like the stuff with like Max Cavalera, like the front guy, the guy I keep talking about, who like was like sort of seen as like the leader of the band and stuff. So much so that when he left Sepultura after this album, everyone still says it's like it's his band, even years after the new singer's been there and stuff. Now, if you want to just to even get a taste of this album, you can literally just check out Roots, Bloody Roots, and Attitude, and then if you like that stuff, you can check out the rest of the album. And to be honest, just to hear that, just in general is something that would be, I would say, good to have within your sort of like metal music kind of knowledge if you haven't heard them before, and they are really enjoyable sort of metal stuff. Like I say, Max Cavalera was always about writing music to be enjoyed by people and stuff, and obviously that's what music is about, and that's what people do in bands. So anything written by the other guitarist, Max Cavalera, he does the rhythm guitars as well as the singing. So like, the dude doing the lead guitar, the drums and the bass, like those dudes, they were trying to write good stuff too. And Roots, Bloody Roots and Attitude, you can really hear like the sort of like like enjoyability factor. I mean, not that they're not in the other tracks, but I find that aspect shines through most with like Roots, Bloody Roots and like Attitude. So I check those out, and you can check out the whole album if you want. Now, I was saying like with Ectomorph, that album there, What Doesn't Kill Me, like it wasn't them at their best. And then after that album, they wrote this, and it's a bit different. It's still metal music, and it's still kind of like thrash core, so sort of like groove thrash. But I find you could probably find some songs on here that you'd like. I'd recommend just listening to like Revolution. Last Fight is very good actually. And then probably I'm in Hate. Maybe just check those out. Maybe just Last Fight and Revolution. But again, it's another metal album you can check out if you want. It's kind of like the same thing with like Soulfly with like its Omen album. Like after its 3 sort of album peak, they just wrote, what they do, but it's not like at their best. It's still them, but so it's kind of like, okay, well, if I'm recommending stuff to like a newcomer, it's kind of like, well, I'm not going to recommend something that's like not the something that's like an incredible album, because whenever I've been talking about that so far, Ectomorph's Redemption hasn't come up, right? But again, if you want to check out like some recommendations from me with this album, Last Fight and Revolution, I would say, and I'm in Hate probably. So it's another album if you want to check out the whole thing. But now after that, Ectomorph, they made Black Flag, and this is when they kind of turned into kind of a bit more like, it was still thrashcore, but it kind of sounded a bit like the production and guitar tone. It was kind of like, it sounded a bit, it was almost like a hardcore kind of thing. But the riffs kind of didn't sound that catchy to me. Like there wasn't like this band that made this thrashcore groove metal that was like just made to be unbelievably catchy. It's sort of like these. It has a lot of riffs where I feel like, okay, that doesn't sound as good as the old sort of stuff. And this is actually my least favorite album from these guys. But again, it's a new album if you want to check it out, and I'd probably recommend. To be honest, I would just recommend listening to The Cross. That was like their single from this album that they released before it came out. And then if you want to check out more of it, just check it out. They played the song Black Flag live a lot, and I think a lot of people tend to like it, but again, I'm not that too big on it. It's just not quite Ectomorph, and if anything tells you about Ectomorph, like what I could say about it, it's like, okay, this doesn't sound like Ectomorph, that's why it's not good. So if you listen to Ectomorph, the proper Ectomorph, that is good. Then, well, I'll just get all this out of the way. Like Ectomorph after that, this kind of sounds like this sort of like new hardcore vibe, but sort of mixed with Outcast. So that's why I slightly preferred it, because it still kind of sounds like Ectomorph. The thing is as well, Ectomorph do this sort of exotic kind of vibes to it with the melodies and stuff, which is why it just sounds so awesome. Like sort of I mean, they say it's like gypsy, like sort of like melodies, but to me it still just kind of sounds like, to someone who's naive, it just sounds like almost like Egyptian and stuff, so that kind of mixed with the hardcore sound of Black Flag. I prefer it more to Black Flag because again, it's kind of more like original Ectomorph. But again, it's not in them in their prime with the material regardless. And it's still that sort of like new hardcore vibe. Now I would just check out again, it's still, they still wanted to write music that's good. People do. It's their album. So I would check out like You Can't Control Me, 10 Plagues, and Lost and Destroyed. And if in general you want to check out the album, I would. Now here we go. I wish I'd seen this sooner. I don't know if getting this stuff out of a box was a stupid idea because it's just kind of done stuff out of order and things, but whatever. Now, I was talking about Beneath the Remains and Arise by Sepultura. After Arise, they made Chaos AD, which was basically like Beneath the Remains and Arise are strictly thrash metal. And then they made stuff that sounds kind of like Soulfly and Ectomorph. Thrash core, just, in my opinion, it's just catchier thrash metal. And this album, again, is just like this Machine Head album and that Linkin Park Hybrid Theory album. It's one of those quintessential albums, just like that Limp Bizkit one as well, Chocolate Starfish and Hot Dog Flavored Water. It's just, there was no other album like this one, and this is, and I keep saying like the best metal album ever is like Chaos AD. I know like when I talk about Beneath the Remains, I talk about how great it is, but when I spoke about Master Puppets, The Blackening, Chaos AD, those three Ectomorph albums, Disturb the Sickness, I didn't bring up Beneath the Remains, but I'm more just fascinated with Beneath the Remains rather than how great it is, because I find this one, in terms of like Sepultura stuff at least, more enjoyable. And I do find this one to be a bit more mainstream because of that, because people just love it so much. I mean, Beneath the Remains and Arise would probably still be within like my top 15 favourite albums. But this one is just ridiculous and there's nothing like it. It is incredible. And I would just check out the whole thing. And if you can't be bothered to listen to the whole thing, Propaganda, Slave New World, and Nomad. A lot of people love Refuse Resist, but personally I'm not that much of a big fan of it. And Territory is really great too, but it can just be a bit slow if you're not really feeling it. Clenched Fist is really nice as well, but honestly all these songs are just incredible. But honestly, at least just check out like Propaganda, like Slave New World. But honestly, in terms of metal art being incredible, enjoyable metal music, that's very great because of also how interesting it is. You know how I was saying with this album, it's like it kind of, it's not that great because it's just so concise and it's just trying to be liked by people who are very young to metal, and in turn makes the music very young. It's like that's kind of the issue with this. But Chaos AD, it's like it's so just, the riffs are just ridiculous. Like all these sections that they have, it just keeps coming at you with different riffs and riffs and riffs, and they're all incredible. So it's like on the one hand you have great quality, and then at the same time you never get bored because it's always changing. And then it also makes you think, how do they keep doing this? How do they keep coming with a new riff, a new thing? And you just think, oh my god, how are they doing this now? It's just ridiculous. So seriously check that out. Now this album follows that Enslaved album. That album that I said had Gladiator, Redemption of Man by God, and Plateau Plomo. And again, it's like, it's not Soulfly at their best. And again, I like pretty much all the songs on it. So I would say if you like this kind of stuff, if you've heard some Soulfly, I would check it out. Spiral is great groove metal, like thrashcore. It's a really good song. I personally would just check out Spiral. Just write it down and check out Spiral, and I guess like Cannibal Holocaust. It's just enjoyable metal music. It's really nice. Here we go. Disturbed 10,000 Fists. Now, I spoke about Disturbed, the Sickness, and then I said the album after that was Believe. And I said Disturbed's peak was its 3 album span of The Sickness, Believe, and 10,000 Fists. And I said Believe was like the weakest out of the 3. Now, I'm not sure if this is the best out of the 3. And recently I've been listening to this and I cannot believe how incredible it is. And I can't believe that human beings wrote this. It is ridiculous. And if you haven't heard these songs, wow, I wish I was you. And to be honest, these songs are that good. Even if you've heard these songs so many times, it's still almost just as enjoyable because they're just that amazing. All you need to do is, once you've listened to them and heard them all again and really enjoyed them, once you go to bed and wake up the next day, they're just as good as again. They're just incredible. Now, my recommendations for the best songs on this album, right? 10,000 Fists, Stricken, I'm Alive, Sons of Plunder, Deify, Decadence, and Pain Redefined. Just listen to those tracks if you don't want to listen to this whole thing. But again, I don't understand how human beings made this. I'm pretty sure I prefer this album to the first one, but I do know that the first one just, they really hit it out of the park with. I would say that as well. The Sickness is like one of those quintessential unique albums that, yeah, like I was saying that when I first spoke about it, that, just never happened again, and the quality's so great and the things that had to come together to make it. It's just like ridiculous that all that happened. Like, we're lucky that all that happened. And again, you see that here where it's just, how did they write this? And I cannot believe it. This needs to be studied by like science. It is insane. Check out those songs and check out this album. Now, this here, right, the Blackening, right, it still sounds like something that is a style that is common. It's like thrash, or sort of modern thrash. Is just kind of, or it's just a metal band that's obviously influenced by Metallica, probably. Well, I know they are, but but again, so it's not like something like the first album, Burn My Eyes, this one here, where it's like, what is this thing that only exists? Like, everything that's in that album only exists in that album. It's not nowhere else. It's almost like someone else could have made this kind of sound, but that doesn't matter when you consider the fact. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm just saying it is a thing, in my opinion. But with this album, what I'm saying about like 10,000 Fists by Disturbed, for example, again, it's like, how did human beings make this? Like with Beneath the Remains as well, how did people make, like, how did the guys in the Blackening, like, when they're going through, like I said this about the Limp Bizkit album, as they were going through the writing process, they could have been doing that for months and it never dipped in quality, and it's all consistent. It all sounds like the same album. It's all from this album, the same vibe, and the quality is like 110% throughout. And I just think, how did this come together? How was it possible that all this music that sounds consistent and doesn't falter, because it kind of sounds like half the album sounds like one album, half the album sounds like something else, and then the quality of the music, and then just the fact that it sounds like how it does, that it is the sound of the Blackening? Why does it sound like this? Why is it this incredible? Why is the riffs have like just incredible amounts of value? I have no idea. And this, I mean, I don't know, I might say that this is like my favorite album, to be honest, because I just don't understand how something this amazing happens. And to be honest, I mean, at the time, I don't think Machine Head knew how great it was. They probably did, but I think if they knew that this was the best album ever, and they sort of thought, okay, we need to give our entire being to this album to make it even greater if it's going to be the best thing ever and that's all that's going to matter. I don't think that that would have changed anything, because it's just, it couldn't have been any greater. It's ridiculous. And if you haven't heard it and you don't want to check out everything on here, check out Clenching the Fist of Dissent, Aesthetics of Hate, Halo, and Wolves. Check that out. Right, those 4 songs. Right, and I just cannot believe it. Just some of the best music that can ever possibly be written. It's just ridiculous. Now this, well, actually, hold on. Right, this is Disturbed's 4th album. So this is after the 3 album span that I said was just the greatest stuff by Disturbed and some of the best stuff ever, as I've said. Now, this stuff, like the best songs on here, basically sound like kind of the upper songs that you would hear on like 10,000 Fists. So it's still very good. The best songs on here, like it's still Disturbed at its best, pretty much. But even then, that would only be a few songs on here. So it did dip in quality, I'd say. Like stuff like Divide, Perfect Insanity, Haunted. I do like them, but they're not the just supersonic tracks like the other stuff on 10,000 Fists and just the ridiculous material that you get on like The Sickness. But like I say, the best stuff on here like is still almost utterly incredible. And the ones I personally just recommend The Night and Criminal, so tracks 4 and 10. But everyone will also tell you to listen to Inside the Fire and Indestructible, because they're apparently not the best ones. I mean, I would say Criminal, The Night, and Inside the Fire. Indestructible's like a very, it's kind of like a quintessential song, but I don't find it's actually as great as the other 3 tracks that I've said. And it kind of, as well, to me, sounds like where Disturbed is kind of dipping, where they're just kind of writing these generic sort of riffs rather than their own incredible selves, uh, being whatever it is that they write on whichever album they're writing at the time. So whichever incredible stuff they wrote for 10,000 Fists, the incredible stuff they wrote on The Sickness. Indestructible does kind of sound like it's just, that's when it's like, okay, they're just a band now. They're just a very good band. They're not a god band, you know. But Criminal, The Night, and Inside the Fire, I would say, are almost like that. Those could have been on 10,000 Fists, but just maybe not the greatest ones. But yeah, maybe just listen to Indestructible, Inside the Fire, The Night, and Criminal. I know people tell you to listen to Indestructible. But I love those, like Criminal and The Night. I listen to all the time, along with the 10,000 Fist ones, recently anyway. Like, because they are very, very good. Now, this is where basically they wrote. This was their 5th album, and they wrote this after. So they wrote this after Indestructible, and this is where they basically, in my opinion, just wrote a whole album of stuff that's like average. And I pretty much never listen to any songs on here, even though I like almost all of them. And that's when it just sort of ended for this with Disturbed for me. Because after that they went on hiatus, and then they came back and they sounded nothing like. They sound like a completely different band, and I don't really like anything on there. It's just low quality, really, in my opinion. Well, like the first band they wrote back from hiatus was just like this, sort of sounded like this, still kind of like Disturbed, but just quite low quality. And then they just changed completely, like, because the difference in quality means, okay, if something's good and something's bad, that must mean the stuff is different. And when they went lower in quality, they basically kind of sounded different, I guess you could say. So when they came back from hiatus and wrote something kind of like this again, and then they wrote an album after that, it was basically like a stylistic departure. And this, like I say, I like everything on here. the stuff after the hiatus, the first album they made from there, it was just so like generic, I thought. And this is a little bit less generic because again it was before that, and it was before the hiatus. But like I say, it's just where it just seemed like it was just, it wasn't really that creative. Like Another Way to Die, it's like, that doesn't sound like Stricken, that doesn't sound like Decadence, that doesn't sound like Sons of Plunder, 10,000 Fists, I'm Alive from 10,000 Fists album. It just sounds like kind of like almost generic kind of stuff, or it's just not that appealing or interesting compared to like the other stuff they wrote. But if you want to check something out, I'd say Asylum or Warrior. I mean, the animal like has a music video. I swear that's supposed to be like one of the singles or whatever, and it's just like a generic chugged riff and just a generic rhythm, like strumming like power chords, and it's just like, oh man, I don't get how they just didn't see it. I don't know whether they could have wrote something greater, but Indestructible was like the last album that I thought had good songs on it. That shouldn't be there, some bullshit. Right, I keep talking about Soulfly with this 3-album peak. Like Metallica had the 3-album Ride the Lightning, Master Puppets, and Justice for All, and then you had Disturbed, which was the Sickness, Believe, and 10,000 Fists, Soulfly, Prophecy, Dark Ages, Conquer. Here is Conquer. Right, so check out this whole album, and this was the like within the 3-album sort of peak, this was the heaviest one, and like the fastest as well, kind of. So listen to Bloodfire. I mean, again, all these albums that are good where you like all the songs, but it doesn't just have one that's really good and the rest are really shit. So it's like with this, it's kind of like there's not. I mean, I would personally recommend Bloodfire, War Hate, Touching the Void, and Unleash. But if you listen to those, you would be like, okay, this is okay. But then what makes this album so special? Because these songs are just okay. But that's the thing, that all, like, either, well, I would say they're very good. But if you thought like those 3 that I recommended were just okay, you'd probably find others being like, okay, this is pretty good, or nah, this ain't really that great. But it's all the tracks that if you have my opinion, I would say are all very good and enjoyable. So that's why, again, this album's special. It's just songs that are just catchy riffs, and what more do you want than songs that are all really quite enjoyable. Now, I said that my 5th favourite band was a band called Mors Principium Est. Like I said, Ectomorph, Metallica, Soulfly, Sepultura, Mors Principium Est. Now, I should have all their albums, because they are one of the best metal bands ever. No opinion. If we like metal for what metal sounds like, then these guys are one of the best metal bands ever. Right? So if that's the case, you need to hear these guys. Right? These guys are Metallica on super steroids. So that must sound awesome. Right? Metallica, if they were fucking like the same, but just like the same Metallica sound, but heavier and like faster, with basically harsh vocals. Right? So, if you want just a recommendation, like The Oppressed Will Rise, Finality, Cleansing Rain, and Terminal Liberation. Alright, I would say The Oppressed Will Rise, Cleansing Rain, and Terminal Liberation. And I said Finality as well, but you don't have to listen to that if you don't want to. But listen to this, and if you like this, listen to their album The Unborn, and then if you listen to that, listen to Pure, The Harmony Remains, and The Unborn, the track The Unborn on the album. Those 3. So Pure, The Harmony Remains, and The Unborn. And then if you like that, listen to just some other tracks from their other albums. Monster in Me, What the Future Holds, and yeah, that'll do. Oh yeah, and God Has Fallen. Honestly, these guys, you need to hear these guys. Mors Principium Est. Now, Sepultura, right? Um, like after the Roots album, so like I say, the main man, Max Cavalera, he left, right, and they got a new singer. And personally, and to the opinion of many others, they thought Sepultura's music wasn't as great, and their popularity, like for the albums written after this, without the main dude Max Cavalera, like I've never heard anyone talk about the first two albums that happened after he left the band, which shows to me that that's why Sepultura was so good, because he must have done so much stuff in that band to write, like sort of like to make the songs good. Like so, half of that stuff must have been written by him, because that's why the band sucked when he left, and that's why. And then he made Soulfly after that, and that's why Soulfly is so good. You know, it's just a guy whose passion is writing incredible musical material using a guitar. Now, Sepultura, I think this is their third album after Max Cavalera left the band. Now, this I would say is their best album. So it's okay, and if anything, Come Back Alive is a very, very good metal song, and I would just check that out if you want. If you want to hear anything from this, and then if you want to hear anything more, and it's a good taster for the new Sepultura with the new singer with their style, where they're the lead guitarist of Sepultura stayed in the band, and then he wrote all the like the guitar stuff for the time with the new singer and stuff, you know, and he, you know, so he wrote all the riffs in this song, in like this album and stuff. So like when you hear Come Back Alive, you hear like, you know, Him at His Best and stuff, and it's a really good song. And if you want to just hear more of like new Sepultura, like I say, I think this is their best album, and I pretty much like every song on here. But again, it's like I like, you know, I'm saying like I like pretty much every song on here, but I can't remember the last time I've heard some of these, because I always want to listen to old Sepultura and Soulfly and Ectomorph, Metallica, The Blackening, Disturbed instead. So that's kind of the issue. But if you want another metal album, if you want to hear new Sepultura or a very good song, Come Back Alive, check all that out. Yeah, sorry, you'll hear me like every like probably like every 15 minutes clicking my computer mouse so it doesn't fall asleep. Now, after Machine Head wrote the Blackening, they wrote this, and I'd say it's kind of like it's a bit more like artsy. So it's a bit more kind of creative in a sense that some of the tracks are like, you know, they kind of played around with a few different ideas. But this is a very strong album where if you like the Blackening or you want to hear some big metal tracks, I wouldn't be surprised if you liked quite a few of these. But I don't think it's. I'd say this is like if the Blackening is 3/3, I would say this is 2/3. So it's almost it's just slightly better than half as good as the Blackening, I would say. But yeah, I would check out Ghosts Will Haunt My Bones. Like compare that to the four songs that I said on the Blackening: Clenching the Fist of Dissent, Halo, Aesthetics of Hate, and Wolves. Ghosts Will Haunt My Bones. I'm literally recommending that, and that's like nothing compared to those tracks. But yeah, check that out. I guess yeah. Also like Now We Die, Killings and Kings, and Damage Inside is a very good emotional track. I really like that. So if you like those sort of songs as well, I'd check that out. Now, I was talking about like Metallica with like they had that 3 album sort of peak, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All. Then they made this, which is sort of like it was a very good idea. Where what they've done is like they just sort of wrote different kinds of tracks instead of just all thrash kind of stuff. Like the riffs kind of sound sometimes a bit different and things like it's all metal, but it's not all necessarily thrash. So that's really interesting. But I still find that the material in these tracks aren't that great, right? Like the God That Failed, like that riff where it's like da-na-na, 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 na-na-na-na-na-na. It's like, okay, so what? it's like it's just music. It's not that compelling. It's not the quintessential riffs from Master of Puppets, or like just the ridiculous clean material and solos, like the little parts in like one and stuff like that, and the chorus in one, and the fast sort of second half of it. It's not that, but the songs are pretty interesting. If you haven't heard this album, I would say its sort of best selling point is just like, okay, it's cool to see like what they've done, like these sort of like, okay, we're gonna write a new album and we're gonna write these riffs and make these songs. Check it out, okay. And people would tell me that I'm crazy, that like what, like Sad But True, Enter Sandman, Nothing Else Matters. Okay, yeah, like Nothing Else Matters is one of my favorite Metallica songs. I said that, but that's just one song. And Wherever I May Roam, they're like, oh, like they're all like some of the best Metallica songs ever. And it's like, well, Enter Sandman's really generic. Sad But True isn't that good. Nowhere compared to half of these juggernauts, like in my opinion, like Chaos AD, Sepultura, The Blackening, other Metallica stuff, and those Disturbed albums. Ectomorph stuff as well, Soulfly. So it's like, it's not that good. But nevertheless, these songs are written by master songwriters. And if you, I mean, I would say it's just not that interesting to me. If you know, if you like sort of a lot of different kind of metal songs, you probably like a lot of tracks on here, because you probably find that it's like, what are you talking about? This is some good ass rocking tunes. You know what I mean? So actually, yeah, for recommendations, I would probably say what I mentioned, what people would say like the best tunes are, like Enter Sandman, Sad But True, Wherever I May Roam, yeah, and then like Nothing Else Matters is one of the best like emotional songs ever. And then yeah, check out the rest of the tracks if you want to hear those. System of a Down, right? I said about the Toxicity album that it's just like one of just the most quintessential like albums, and like the stuff is just completely likable. Like the riffs are just insanely enjoyable and huge and heavy. And there's nothing else like System of a Down or that album. Then I said sort of like after it, or at least I think I did. I said before Toxicity, the stuff I didn't think was that good or likable. Then after it, they kind of with the album Steal This Album, after Toxicity, Steal This Album, half of it was kind of like the vibe of Toxicity, but again, it's almost as if this stuff wasn't as likable or as great. And then after that, they made this. And BYOB, I said on Toxicity, Chop Suey and Aerials are like some of their like best stuff. And if Chop Suey isn't their best song, BYOB is. And even that song alone, being on this album, I know I haven't said any album's good for just one track, and I was saying The Blackening isn't that great, even if Nothing Else Matters is amazing. There's just something about BYOB where I think I'm just glad that that exists, and if this album being written had to happen just for BYOB to exist, then I'm glad. And you need to check out that song. That song is really good. But a lot of these songs are, I like it. I like this album for the same reason about like Toxicity, sort of with the aspect of it being catchy. But I was saying that after with Steal This Album, it was half of it was all right, and then the rest wasn't that likable, kind of like the first album. Then with this album, the riffs weren't big and heavy; they were just kind of like enjoyable, like catchy. And then that's kind of what I'm trying to say with this album. It's just like catchy stuff, which is, that just sounds like everything else I've been talking about, and like Toxicity, like radio slash video. This Cocaine makes me feel like I'm on this song. Sad Statue, Old School Hollywood, BYOB, Cigaro. They're just very catchy stuff, but not as likable as Toxicity. So I wouldn't say it's as great as that, but some quite catchy stuff on here. and BYOB is within the top 3 of their best songs. So I'd check that out. This is a Japanese melodic death metal band that basically wrote some great stuff on this album, and every track on here is very, very good. And I would seriously recommend that you just kind of listen to the whole thing, because it's sort of like there's no telling what songs you would enjoy most, and it's very just lovable metal music. And I really think that, obviously if you like metal, then this is probably going to be hopefully an album that you'll really, really love. So I would say check this out. Serenity in Murder. Serenity in Murder. I mean, I don't even see that in the logo. It's almost like making me second guess what the band's called. Yeah, if it's in focus. Serenity in Murder. The first Frison of the world. Yeah, there you go. And that's the thing. Like they made, like, to my knowledge, or like the last time I checked, they had 2 albums after this, and they just completely like this is good. I just remembered, this is good because it's just like everything else, where they wrote incredible quintessential music with the rock band setup. So 1 or 2 guitars with a bass guitar, vocals and drums, right? And so that's what Metallica did. That's what Chaos AD did. The Blackening. That's what most Principium S do. That's what Disturbed did. And I feel like these guys did the same. That's why it's so great. And then I feel like with the next albums, they mixed like orchestral elements, but to make them fit with the metal stuff, like, so the metal material, the rock band aspects, it's almost like they toned that down, made that more basic, and then sort of had, like, they couldn't have incredible orchestral stuff because then that wouldn't fit, so they toned that down, so you just have like not great orchestral stuff and not great metal. So as a whole, it was just like generic kind of stuff, like generic metal with generic orchestral stuff, and it was like, no, they should have stayed like this, just writing incredible metal music. And speaking of that, Judas Priest, Painkiller. Again, probably some of the greatest metal music ever written, with Painkiller being one of the best metal songs ever made. And if you have not heard the track Painkiller, wow, you are in for a treat. That is incredible and utterly quintessential. If you like Painkiller, check out the rest of this album. And this is the only album by Judas Priest that I like. Everyone should know that this is where they just destroyed it, and I don't understand why they didn't make more stuff like this. Like, how do you write this and then just leave it at that? It's just kind of like, I would have loved to see more of this stuff. It's ridiculous. One of the best albums ever, and I loved listening to it in full, like like you do with any of the other albums, but this in particular, because it is just so great. And Painkiller, just listen to that. And if you do want some more recommendations, I'd say like Nightcrawler and Between the Hammer and the Anvil. Yeah, check this out. Lastly, finally, this is Caius, sort of like stoner rock metal band. I don't think that's gonna focus. But yeah, Kyuss. Yeah, Caius. Blues for the Red Sun. Now, this album I bought when there was like a sale on, so I'm not really too big on it. But all the songs are quite likable. People, like I said about people trying to, everyone writes music for people to enjoy because they don't want pain in this world, you know what I mean? They write stuff because they don't want to see people upset, so they write music for people to enjoy. So it's all pretty catchy stuff. To be honest, if you like groove metal, This is kind of similar, but just lighter. That's why I did kind of like it. But again, it's not really kind of my thing. It's just a bit too light. But yeah, it's like I shouldn't really have got this, but it's not completely what I listen to. So I never ever really listen to these tracks. But check out Green Machine. And then I'd say like 50 Million Year Trip. Or just check out the album in general, to be honest. Again, it's something to check out. So yeah. And that is the whole box, finally. I don't know why you would want to watch this. Now that I'm looking back, I'm just thinking, you know what? Who's going to watch this for 2 hours and 20 minutes? And I just keep saying the same thing because I'm trying to relate stuff back to other things. And I need people to remember those things. So I keep saying the same thing again and again. But I don't know. This is a video to have in the background whilst you're eating your cereal. You know, and I hope that you found some stuff that you'd want to listen to, you know what I mean? Like I say, you've obviously heard my opinions and what influences me. Check out my music too. Christopher McLaren, Start of a New Beginning, First Steps. Start of the New Beginning is my EP. First Steps is my album. You can check it out on YouTube, Spotify, and you can free download all those songs from soundcloud.com. Just type my name in on there, Christopher McLaren. You can download any song you want. And yeah, as I was saying about Twisted Insane, like I've got him on one of my songs, and it's quite a I've said this a million times, quite a quintessential song. One of the songs from my debut EP, Start of the New Beginning. One of the songs on there, Through the Eyes of God. I got Twisted Insane on there, and everyone I've seen who listened to that tune loved it. So check that out too. That'll be in with my discography on wherever you look, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, whatever, SoundCloud. That tune will be there. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, guys. I don't even know if you got this far or whatever. But yeah, if you want to know anything, need anything, just let me know. Peace out, man. Take it easy. God bless.